A nail-biter in Alabama as voters go to the polls in a Senate primary, setting up a battle between the GOP establishment and Washington outsiders. It's going to be one to watch. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom, and that is just the tip of the iceberg. Good morning. I'm Shannon Bream.
How you doing?
I'm busy.
It's a pretty fast hour.
Yeah. One more to go.
I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning, everybody. Today's primary testing President Trump's political clout and his power in the populist conservative movement that helped send him to the White House. Senator Luther Strange, appointed to replace Jeff Sessions, now the AG, facing off against Judge Roy Moore, Alabama's former Chief Justice. Former Trump strategist Steve Bannon endorsing Moore last night at a rally, while Vice President Mike Pence was campaigning for Luther Strange. Same day, same night, same race. Wow.
The president also sent me here tonight to ask the people of Alabama to send Luther Strange back to the United States Senate. You know, Luther, you've got big shoes to fill, but I can tell that's never really been a serious problem for you.
President Trump making a final push, tweeting today, Luther Strange has been shooting up in the Alabama polls since my endorsement. Finish the job. Vote today for Big Luther. Peter Ducey is live in Birmingham, Alabama, where he's been hanging out and taking the lay of the land. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Shannon. The crowd went wild down in Fairhope last night when Judge Roy Moore actually pulled a gun out of his pocket and started waving it around to make a point that just because the NRA didn't endorse him doesn't mean he's not firearm friendly.
It's been very hard for my wife and myself to wither nearly 3 months of negative ads that we couldn't answer with money because we didn't have it. Ads that were completely false. That I don't believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the Second Amendment.
The strategist who helped get President Trump elected, Steve Bannon, did speak for Moore on election eve and described a divide within the GOP to Moore supporters, who he says are being cast aside by establishment Republicans rooting for Luther Strange.
They think you're a pack of morons. They think you're nothing but rubes. They have no interest at all in what you have to say, what you have to think, or what you want to do. And tomorrow, you're going to get an opportunity to tell them what you think of the elites that run this country.
President Trump's pick in this race, Senator Luther Strange, already voted this morning and did a last-minute diner visit trying to turn out as many voters as possible. Last night, the vice president did come to Birmingham to rally on his behalf and was very careful not to rock the boat with Republicans who he may eventually have to ask to vote for Judge Roy Moore.
We're not here because we're against anybody. I'm here because President Donald Trump and I are for Luther Strange.
The two things Senator Strange has really tried to hammer home in the home stretch. Number one, that he has the endorsement of President Trump, who a lot of people in the state really want to succeed. Number two, that he thinks he has the best chance on the ballot against a Democrat in November. We will find out very soon if voters prefer that to the so-called Ten Commandments Judge Roy Moore. Polls close 7 o'clock local time, 8 Eastern. Shannon.
It's going to be a fascinating countdown to the end of those polls. Peter Ducey, thank you very much.
While we await that, we await this now. From Capitol Hill, awaiting the Republican leaders' weekly news conference. Any moment now it should begin. And we expect questions, comments on health care and tax reform, two of the biggest issues this week. So we'll get you there when it starts. As of this hour, 4 Republican senators will be voting no on the Obamacare repeal bill before that body. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel live on the Hill with more on all this. And Mike, here we go. Good morning.
Good morning, Bill. Yeah, that's right. It appears Senate Republican leaders have come up short again on health care reform with too many defections from their own ranks. Susan Collins of Maine, Ted Cruz of Texas, John McCain of Arizona, and Rand Paul of Kentucky have all said they are a no on Graham Cassidy at this stage. GOP leaders could only afford 2 no's, with Vice President Mike Pence breaking the tie. Collins says she talked to President Trump and others, but just could not get to yes.
It was completely cordial, as was my conversation with Vice President Pence and with Secretary Price and with many other members of the administration. I appreciated their input. It's just at the end, I can't support this bill.
So now the question is what Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell will do. We should have a better sense after the Republicans have their weekly luncheon today. Bill sponsor Senator Lindsey Graham talked about some of the challenges of trying to get to 50 yes votes.
I just think Ted Cruz, at the end of the day, wants to repeal and replace Obamacare. This does it. Senator Cruz is a fine man. He's asked us for things, some of which we could do and some of which we can't. Pre-existing illness coverage is required. We're not going to play around with that. We're not going to make any changes to suggest that you don't cover pre-existing illnesses.
Capitol Police arrested 181 protesters who turned out for yesterday afternoon's Senate Finance Committee hearing on the Graham-Cassidy bill. Top Democrats note the opposition to this legislation.
And when Americans hear what this bill is about, almost none of them like it. None of them like it. That's why we're hiding this bill. That's why we're not debating this bill. That's why we're trying to rush it through without a score.
That score reference is referring to the Congressional Budget Office, which said it did not have time to do a full analysis. Its preliminary review was enough for Susan Collins to say she's a no. Bill?
Mike Emanuel, more to come. Thank you, sir. Some analysis now with Shannon on that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we just want to let you know that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is speaking about health care on the Senate floor right now. And keep in mind, they're going to have that GOP Senate policy lunch at 12:45. We may find out whether they even tried to put the bill on the floor to get to an actual vote. It looks like Senator Sass there overseeing things as they get to work this morning on the Senate floor. Meanwhile, tax reform, another key issue on the Republican agenda. As we await the House GOP news conference, we'll take you there live as soon as any news breaks. And President Trump heading tomorrow to Indiana to push his tax cut plan. Guy Benson is political editor at townhall.com and a Fox News contributor. Good morning to you, Guy.
Hey, Shannon.
Listen, we know there are those within the GOP who say, let's just let the health care thing go. We don't even think that there's a good chance they don't even put it to a vote. Let's move on to tax reform. They think that they're going to get some Democrat votes on that, and that's something they can actually put in the win column after really looking for months for a legislative win.
Well, let's talk about health care first. I think the Graham-Cassidy bill died on Friday when John McCain said he wasn't going to support it. So I would be very surprised at this point if Mitch McConnell says, yes, let's go through the entire ritual embarrassment of calling a vote that we're going to lose again. They went through that a few months ago. I don't think he's eager to do that again. The other thing I would point out, though, is one of the difficult senators in this whole process from the leadership perspective is Susan Collins. We heard the sound bites from her just a moment ago from Maine. She's a moderate. And the one thing that I might counsel Senator McConnell to at least consider is that Susan Collins put out her own Obamacare replacement plan months ago, along with Bill Cassidy. It is somewhat similar to the Graham-Cassidy bill, but has some significant differences. Would Susan Collins be willing to support her own plan? I'm not necessarily convinced of that at this point. Seems like she's a pretty hard no on anything that looks like Obamacare repeal, but she did put it out there, and I wonder if that might be a building block for Republicans if they're going to do one last-ditch effort to build it around Collins-Cassidy. We'll see what happens, but as of right now, as it stands, I would be very surprised if you're going to see McConnell put his members on a march off the cliff to vote for something that has no chance of passing.
Okay, so then before we get to tax reform, who pays next year? If, as the predictions are from the right, that Obamacare continues to crumble, we've seen skyrocketing premiums and deductibles and people who say, yeah, I've got coverage, but I can't use it. I can't afford it. If it's truly going to be the disaster that the right claims it is, do you just let it implode now? Does the GOP own that because they didn't do something, or do they try to scramble together past something that is a partial repeal replace that itself has many flaws, and then they own that? How does this work in 2018?
It's tough because you're going to have a lot of Republican voters who are furious at the party for failing to follow through on a 7-year promise on which the party won 3 out of the last 4 elections. You have a lot of people on the other side wanting to punish Republicans for even thinking about taking care away from people, because that's been the line from the left. It's been very successful. So you're in this very difficult status quo and sort of stuck in it unless you can come up with some sort of solution over the next year, or you might have less time than that, which is Obamacare is failing. It's not like we have to wait to see if those predictions are correct. it is harming millions of people while helping some people as well. If you're just stuck with one party defending the status quo, the Democrats, and maybe looking to single payer and that hugely expensive proposition, and you've got the Republican Party, which keeps saying we want to get rid of it and replace it with something else, but we can't actually do it, even though we're in charge. Where do we go? Where do we go from there?
All right, listen, I used up all your time on health care. We didn't get to talk about tax reform, but that's going to be around for weeks, maybe months. So we'll bring you back many times, I'm sure, in the process of them working on that.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks, Guy.
Heard from Ronna McDaniel last hour when she was on her show. She runs the RNC. She was in Pennsylvania yesterday. She said she got an earful. So that could be just the beginning of what a lot of these lawmakers are walking into if it fails.
Yeah.
So now the debate raging over the NFL national anthem protests yet again. This word from the White House. Watch.
This isn't about the president being against something, which is what everybody wants to drive. This is about the president being for something. This is about the president being for respect in our country.
And this morning, new reaction from the president as Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn introduces a new resolution calling for all Americans to honor the flag. She'll explain what she's pushing for live in a moment next here.
And protests getting underway at Georgetown University as Attorney General Jeff Sessions prepares to address what he's calling the lack of free speech on college campuses. Panel's going to join us to debate that. Plus this.
However, last weekend, Trump once again said that our leadership will not last, making a declaration of war.
So there is a barrage of threats in one afternoon from North Korea's foreign minister. How the White House is responding to all of that.
I'm going to take you back live to Washington, where the House GOP press conference is going on. Speaker Ryan now talking about efforts for recovery in Puerto Rico. Let's listen in.
Many of our fellow citizens. Now, the Trump administration is going to do all that it needs to do to get the information to us so that Congress again will act in response to these hurricanes. I want to address another important development with our agenda. We're very excited about this because we really believe that we have an historic chance at prosperity in this country. Our Republican leaders in the House, the Senate, and the White House, we've come together on this concrete framework for historic tax reform. We're going to be discussing this with our members tomorrow. I can't tell you how excited this is because this is not just a big moment for Congress, it's a big moment for Americans. Too many people are struggling in America today. They pay too much in taxes, they feel stuck, they feel anxious, they're living paycheck to paycheck, and we need faster economic growth, and we need a tax code that's built for growth that helps struggling families. People need relief, and we know this. That's why this framework is going to be focused on helping American families. It's going to be focused on helping the people in the middle. It's going to be focused on helping people get to the middle who are struggling to do that. At the same time, our businesses in America cannot compete with the low tax rates of foreign nations. So what are they doing? They're moving overseas. And the people who are staying here, the companies that stay, they're getting hit hard. And when a company moves overseas, it takes its jobs and it takes its capital overseas. I was over at Harley-Davidson just the other day. It's an American-made company in Menominee Falls, Wisconsin. Everybody knows what a Harley-Davidson motorcycle is. I heard the enormous challenges that they face. Their competitors all face much lower effective tax rates than Harley does. That's the story of American businesses who are put at an enormous competitive disadvantage. But historic tax reform will put all of our businesses in a better competitive position so they can stay here at home, so that they can raise wages, increase economic growth, more investment in American jobs, more investment in American economic growth, and more take-home pay so that the people in America living paycheck to paycheck can get the relief that they need and that they deserve. If we succeed in tax reform, and if we lower the tax rates, these kinds of companies will prosper, they'll grow, they'll hire, they'll increase wages. There's no doubt about it, this country needs this. And that is why we're very, very excited about historic tax reform. Reform that we have not seen in this country since 1986. It is high time we do this, and that is why we're very, very excited about doing this, bringing prosperity, wages, higher take-home pay to American citizens. And that's why tomorrow is the beginning of a very important process that we're really excited about here in Congress. Questions?
Mr. Speaker, you and I share a common bond as co-owners of the Green Bay Packers.
Any other Packer owners here? Okay, just the two of us. Okay. Well.
So last week, the president was in Alabama, and he said that owners should consider benching or firing players that disrespect the anthem by sitting or kneeling during the national anthem. What's your take on that?
Hey, look, people are clearly within their rights to express themselves how they see fit. My own view, though, is we shouldn't do it on the anthem. The national anthem, our flag, and the people who defend it and represent it, that should be celebrated everywhere and always, and that's my opinion. Casey.
Speaker, I don't mean to put you on the spot. You were talking about health care, tax reform.
I slipped.
Kind of slipped a little bit.
Do you want Kevin in there?
I was sending a message to the Senate.
There's been a split in your party and some concern in the Senate that Republican voters are very angry at Congress for not doing anything on major priorities. Do you think that they'll forgive you? Will Republicans forgive you if you can pass tax reform, even if you fail?
Well, obviously, in the House, we're a little frustrated because the House has done its job. We passed our health care bill last May. We have passed more bills in the House of Representatives at this stage of the Trump presidency than at the same stage of the Obama presidency, the Clinton presidency, both Bush presidencies. We have been extremely productive. For the first time since 2004, we passed all of our appropriation bills as a Republican majority. So, yes, we're a little frustrated that the Senate has not acted on a seminal promise, health care, which, by the way, Obamacare is collapsing. But tax reform affects every single American. Tax reform affects our confidence as a country. It affects whether or not middle-class taxpayers who are struggling can actually meet their mortgage payment, get their kids in school, save for retirement. And it really determines whether we have the kind of an economy that gets people into the middle class in the first place. So tax reform is the most important thing we can do to restore confidence to this country, to get jobs and prosperity. And that is why we are so singularly focused on getting this done this year. Bade.
Tax question for you. The president, a couple of weeks ago, in a meeting with Democrats, said he was against reducing taxes on the wealthy. We've seen some reports about condensing the tax brackets from top 39 to 35%. Do you think it's important to reduce that tax bracket on the wealthy? And how do you square that circle with what the president said?
We'll answer those questions when we release our outline, Rachel. I think that particular question you're asking will be addressed tomorrow. Susan.
Is it still your goal, as I've seen you at various press conferences, holding up that postcard?
Yes.
Talking about tax rates and helping the middle class. What about simplification?
Yes.
That's still going to be part of the...
It is. And your question is about simplification of the tax code. That is one of our most important priorities. I think a lot of American families are struggling under the complexity and the weight of the tax code and the invasiveness of the Internal Revenue Service. So this is a top priority of ours, and this is something we will also address tomorrow. Thank you very much.
All right, you've been listening in to the GOP House press conference. A lot of news there from the speaker about the tax reform plan they'll roll out tomorrow. Joining us now to talk about that and more, Tennessee Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn, who recently introduced, by the way, a resolution in the House on conduct during the national anthem. We'll get to that, but I want to start. Welcome, Congresswoman. Good to have you with us this morning.
Shannon.
I want to talk about tax reform. There was a question there about the huge slate of legislative priorities that have come and gone with respect to getting some of these major things ticked off the list that campaign promises and those kinds of things. The speaker said, listen, the House has passed all kinds of things, but that's not happened in the Senate. How are House members feeling about your colleagues across the Hill?
Well, there's a little bit of frustration with the Senate, that is fair to say, but we are very hopeful that they're going to find a way to take an action on health care before September 30th hits the books, and we are very hopeful that they're going to join us in our push to make the tax code flatter, fairer, and simpler. And tomorrow, we're going to be all sleeves rolled up, focused, working through this, making a determination of exactly what that package is going to look like.
Will you do it with Democrat votes?
We would love to do it with Democrat votes. And Shannon, it is so important that many of the things we're doing, we do in a bipartisan way. As a matter of fact, out of the 300 bills that the Speaker referenced that we've passed in the House, a good number of those are bipartisan bills, and some of them are Democrat bills. So you do see us working across the aisle and reaching across the aisle. We would encourage more of that.
Okay, let's talk about the resolution that you've introduced. Who does this apply to? What kind of statement are you trying to make with respect to how we all act during the anthem?
Yes, Shannon, this is H.R. 532. It is a restatement of support for what is in U.S. Code, 36 U.S. Code 301B. And it details how we should conduct ourselves during a playing of the national anthem. And my short little resolution, just a few lines long, actually just says, gives the historical background on the resolution and that we follow conduct as prescribed. It is a restatement of that decorum. It is a restatement of respect for the national anthem, that we stand and we be grateful and we honor our country and the opportunity it gives.
All right, we are out of time, but we'll keep an eye on that. Thank you, Congresswoman, for your time. We appreciate it.
Sure.
In the meantime, nuclear North Korea upping the ante, threatening to shoot U.S. bombers from the sky. Montana Senator Steve Daines just got back. We'll ask him how the U.S. should respond next.
I could sense something special about this man. I could sense his faith, his sincerity, his humility, and his dedication to public service. Luther Strange puts Alabama and conservative values first, and he always will.
So that from last night, Vice President Mike Pence campaigning for Big Luther, as the president likes to call him. Alabama Senator Luther Strange trailing in the polls, facing off against the primary challenger, Judge Roy Moore. It's a battle against the insiders and the outsiders. Before the 2018 midterms, former Trump strategist Steve Bannon declaring war on the establishment. He was there last night as well, campaigning for the other guy. Larry Sabato, Director of the Center for Politics, University of Virginia. Sir, how are you today? And it's nice to have you back here in America's Newsroom. Wow. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
Frame this for our audience, the cross currents with Pence and Trump in one corner, now Bannon in the other. How's this going to go?
This is a strange one, Bill, and if people are confused, it's completely understandable. You have the appointed incumbent, Senator Luther Strange, being strongly endorsed and repeatedly endorsed by President Trump. Now, this is a Republican runoff primary, so you would think that was all she wrote, since this was Trump's 6th best state last November, and he won it by an incredible 28%. It's not, though, because the Trump base is split, as represented by Steve Bannon speaking out for Roy Moore, the former state Supreme Court Chief Justice, who's considered more conservative or more populist or more nationalist, take your pick, than Luther Strange. With the Trump base split, and it really is split, you've got a situation where Alabama Republicans have to figure out where their loyalties lie, and we're going to find out tonight.
I thought one of the more interesting things I read, the president was there on Friday night for the rally for Luther Strange. But at the Roy Moore rally last night, people were wearing Make America Great Again hats at the Moore rally. Now, listen, Steve Bannon, as you mentioned, was there last night. I want to play you a quick clip, okay? And then I want to figure out what his role is now in the dynamics of this political year. Watch here.
They think you're nothing but rubes. They have no interest at all in what you have to say, what you have to think, or what you want to do. And tomorrow, you're going to get an opportunity to tell them what you think of the elites that run this country.
Nothing but a bunch of rubes, country bumpkins, as interpreted by dictionary.com. What or how effective is Steve Bannon outside the West Wing? How do you see his role now?
Well, he's an outsider now, but he still keeps in touch, apparently, with President Trump on a regular basis. And I don't think Trump is terribly unhappy that he's playing that side of it, because what Bannon and Sarah Palin and others who are campaigning for Moore have essentially been saying is the establishment has misled President Trump on this one. You're not repudiating President Trump by voting for Roy Moore. In fact, you'll be strengthening his agenda. That's their argument. Of course, Luther Strange and his supporters, like Mitch McConnell, are saying, if you want an effective senator, you've got one already. Keep Luther Strange. You know what was interesting to me, Bill? The president's rally on Friday night in Alabama, reporters from a wide variety of perspectives indicated that as people were leaving, many of them said, I love President Trump, but don't tell anybody I'm voting for Roy Moore. That may be why Roy Moore is up an average of 10 points in in the polls, though we learned last November how effective the polls are.
This is
but
true.
Still, he is the front runner.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. It'll be interesting to watch later tonight. Larry Sabato, nice to have you back. It's that season.
Thank you, Bill.
You bet. Thank you. Shannon.
Well, we are awaiting a big meeting at the White House. Republicans now say that tax reform is absolutely necessary to help American families. Well, moments from now, President Trump will meet with the committee, Republicans and Democrats, the ones responsible for unveiling what's going to happen to your taxes. We'll take you there the second that gets underway. Plus, holding on to hope in Mexico City. More on the efforts to try to find any survivors following the quake there. We are live on the ground. And North Korea's foreign minister says the U.S. has declared war on his country. The White House says that is absurd. So is the rogue nation becoming an even graver threat? Montana Senator Steve Daines just visited the border between North and South Korea. He's going to join us live for an update.
I'm okay with the tough talk coming out of the White House because we have to keep the pressure up. China is very good and North Korea is even better at kind of dialing up tensions.
We've not declared war on North Korea, and frankly, the suggestion of that is absurd. It's never appropriate for a country to shoot down another country's aircraft when it's over international waters. Our goal is still the same. We continue to seek the peaceful denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. That's our focus.
So don't think this tension's gone away. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders rejecting North Korea's claim the U.S. has declared war. Montana Senator Steve Daines just got back from South Korea. He delivered this quote, standing at the border, provided more context for the threat North Korea poses daily to its southern neighbor and the globe. We must do everything in our power to strangle the North Korean regime and end North Korea's nuclear threat, end quote. Senator Daines, my guest from the Hill. And, sir, thank you and welcome back here to the U.S. of A. I read partially what you learned. What do you want our audience to understand from that visit?
Well, it's very clear being on the ground there in South Korea and then going up the DMZ, literally standing on the border between North Korea and South Korea, of the grave threat that the North Korean regime presents to the United States as well as the entire world. It's so important that we have unified command, and I saw that with General Brooks, the commanding general of the forces there in South Korea. I also had lunch with South Korea's defense minister. But we have unity between the United States and South Korea, frankly, and our allies. Why is that important? Well, there are 25 million people living in Seoul. That's just 35 miles from North Korea border. You have the ability, North Koreans can launch artillery within seconds and hit Seoul. We have 300,000 Americans on the ground there, 30,000 that serve in the military. The North Koreans have an extensive chemical weapons stockpile, and so this is a very complicated situation. That is why it's so important we put all the economic pressure and diplomatic pressure we can on North Korea for a peaceful resolution and denuclearization of the peninsula. But as the president has stated, all options are on the table. And this bully, Kim Jong-un, understands, unfortunately, one thing, and that is strength and force. And that's why I'm so proud of our military and what they're doing right now.
React to the foreign minister from North Korea who just this week said the following threat.
Since the U.S. has made a declaration of war, we will have every right to make countermeasures, including the right to shoot down the United States strategic bombers, even if they do not come into our airspace.
So there was a flyby over the weekend. The White House says there has been no declaration of war. That's absolutely incorrect. How do you respond to the ramping up of language that is, it hasn't backed down, it has not ebbed, Senator?
Well, the claim from North Korea is absolutely absurd that we've somehow declared war. I lived in China back in the 1990s. In fact, I was living in China working for Procter & Gamble when then President Clinton signed the nuclear deal with the North Koreans 25 years ago. Our policies with North Korea over the past 25 years have failed. And this is not a partisan issue. We've had both Republican administrations and Democratic administrations, and we've seen a failed policy there. I wholeheartedly agree with President Trump and Vice President Pence. When Vice President Pence said in April, if you remember, he said, the era of strategic patience is over. If left to their own accord, the North Koreans will put a nuclear bomb on the tip of an intercontinental ballistic missile and have capabilities to hit the continental United States. This cannot be allowed. That's why I am just grateful for the men and women right now serving us in the U.S. military, who are operating in incredible professional capacity. The conversation with General Brooks and his team of generals, very, very thoughtful, very strategic, but I'll tell you what, unwavering in their resolve, making sure the North Koreans understand that all options are on the table, and we are not going to back down.
Okay, back to your first answer. You had a B-1B Lancer bomber from Guam fly over or near North Korea the other day, F-15C Eagle fighters as well, out of Okinawa, Japan. How do you find a way to back this down?
Well, and literally that flight of those B-1s, the F-15s and F-35s occurred just a couple hours after I met with our commanding general there in South Korea. Well, we need to apply all the economic and diplomatic pressure that we have. We need the cooperation and help from the Chinese. They play a very important role in additional sanctions, the banking sanctions, stopping the oil imports in North Korea. Those are some important levers that we can throw there at the moment to work to the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. It doesn't
appear it's worked yet, Senator.
Well, that's why all options need to be on the table. And this is an evil dictator in Kim Jong-un, who unfortunately he is a bully, and it seems like he only understands one thing, and that is strength and force. And that is why, again, I'm very proud of our president, our vice president, the Trump administration here, who are ensuring they're getting a clear message from the United States that shooting missiles over the top of Japanese airspace is not going to be allowed.
Twice. And it may happen
Two
again.
times in the month of September.
Yeah, Senator, welcome home, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us, and we'll see what goes on next, okay? Stephen Daines.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, sir, for your time today.
Thank you.
Rescue efforts in Mexico City a week after the devastating earthquake. 326 are now confirmed dead nationwide, and at least 40 are still missing. Bodies now still being pulled from the rubble. Jonathan Hunt joins us live from Mexico City with more. Hello, Jonathan.
Hey, Shannon, a growing sense of sadness and resignation is beginning to hang over this site where the families of the missing have been waiting for more than a week now for word of their loved ones. They have been here day and night ever since that 7.1 earthquake hit. Whole families just waiting for news, and posted up here a list of those who are still listed as missing. And then as we go past what has become a tent city here, you can see up beyond the last of these tents, the rescue site itself, the search and rescue operation going on top of that collapsed office building. I have to say, in the past 24 hours, we have seen the pace of that search and rescue operation slow considerably, and the Mexican government has announced that it will not go on much longer, just about another 48 hours. They say that on Thursday this will cease to be a search and rescue operation, and it will formally become merely a recovery operation. And then the rebuilding of Mexico City, healing the physical scars, will take time and will take money. It will be much tougher to heal the mental scars. Shannon?
It is a massive undertaking on all those fronts. Jonathan Hunt, thank you very much.
Well, 20 minutes now before the hour, President Trump getting ready to deliver on one of his most controversial campaign promises. Remember this?
Believe me, if we have to close down our government, we're building that wall.
Construction now underway near San Diego on part of President Trump's border wall, but it comes as the Trump team faces a roadblock. We'll tell you about that in a live report next.
Plus, Attorney General Jeff Sessions about to be greeted by protesters as he prepares to speak about free speech at Georgetown University, why he says free speech on college campuses is officially under attack.